battery. What's up, guys? So it's been a while since I posted a video, and for that I sort of apologize, but I don't really apologize, because this is a time of year where our general maintenance starts to really pick up, and it's about to be winter. People's vacations are over, kids are back to school, it's starting to get cold out, cars are starting to break more, so we are jumping on brake line jobs. We are doing a ton of just general maintenance, oil changes, fluid changes, winterizations, all that stuff that, not really all that interesting. And on top of that, I don't have anybody to film me here. It gets super busy, super fast, and then I completely forget to film anything, and I don't even have the time to really film anything. So today is Sunday. It's a down day for me. Still waiting on some parts to come in, a few other odds and ends. So I figured that I would do some practice, and in TIG welding, practicing is super important. I don't care how good you are, how good you think you are, there is always room for improvement. And with me, it is two things: stop starts on stainless and titanium, and just general aluminum welding. Aluminum welding for me has always kind of been an interesting thing. I can get it done, but I have some issues once in a while. Some days, everything that I weld comes out beautifully. Like the tank I did for the GTST. That came out amazing. But had I done that same tank the next day, there's no telling whether or not it would have been consistent with the first one that I built. So what I'm gonna do today is I'm gonna do a couple different things. I have this nice piece of 1/4-inch aluminum plate here. I drew some lines in it. I'm hoping you guys can see all this and me at the same time, but I drew some lines in it. We've got some 4043 filler. This is 6061 aluminum, and all I'm going to be doing today is running beads and running beads and running beads and running beads and just practicing. So one of the things I wanted to try is I always weld my aluminum with a pointed tungsten. I don't know if you guys can see that, but that has a pretty significant point on the end of it. And with an inverter machine, you can do that. You can run a pointed electrode. It makes your arc starts much more precise. I can start up in the location I want without the arc wandering. But today what I'm going to do is I'm going to weld a bead, then we're going to ball the electrode, and then we'll weld another bead and see if I can gain a little bit more consistency with a balled tungsten versus a pointy tungsten. Because that is my biggest problem, consistency. One bead will look perfect, the next bead will look terrible, the next one will be even more terrible, then the next one will be even perfect than the first one, and I have no consistency when it comes to aluminum. So that's what we're going to be practicing today. So what I'm going to do now is stop talking, and I'm going to throw on my gloves, and we're going to weld one bead all the way down this plate at 150 amps with some 3/32 4043, 2.4 millimeter, and we'll see what it looks like. And then we're going to ball the tungsten. So I don't know how much of this you guys are going to be able to see, but we'll tilt you down, get you in there somewhat. Actually, I wonder if I bring you guys over here so you can see directly down on what I'm doing. Maybe the GoPro will pick it up, but we'll find out. Alright, so not too terrible. One of the things that I noticed with this particular weld is that the material was very cold here and very hot at the end of here. So we got a narrow bead here, a wide bead here. So right about here, I needed to start letting off on the pedal, and I did not. So that is an issue. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually pad a bead right next to that one and see if we can do a little bit better now that the material is actually hot. Alright, so a little bit better. We let off right there. You can see the puddle skinnied up. We let off a little bit too much. Didn't have enough heat in it. That bead right there didn't penetrate. So we're going to do another one. And we're going to keep doing this, guys, until my hand falls off. Or I can figure this out. Alright, so that one, if you can see it, is much, much better, with the exception that I dipped the tungsten in the damn aluminum right there. But as you can see, that bead is actually pretty consistently good. So we're going to run one more with the pointed tip, and then we're going to let this piece cool off a little bit, and then we'll ball it up and we'll see how that goes. And hopefully on this one we won't run the tungsten into the piece of metal, which is another problem. There we go. That's what we're looking for. You can see here, very nice straight line, nice ripple pattern, no weirdness in the bead. You can see there's some cavitation and porosity in this one. You can see the inconsistencies in the dabs. In this one, we're pretty much dead on. What we did on that one is I increased my travel speed a little bit, kept the pedal at full bore 150 amps, and just made sure that I was adding enough rod to compensate for the heat, which sometimes you can go at it with not enough heat, you won't get enough penetration, and your beads will be a little funky. And that's what happened right here on the second bead. Is, let me use this as a pointer, on the second bead right here, and hopefully you guys are seeing this, but on the second bead right here, you can see that it's raised up quite significantly right here. Now that barely penetrated that metal whatsoever, and if I cut this in half, which I might do later, you'll see that this right here is actually no penetration whatsoever. Same thing with where I dipped the tungsten in the puddle. On this side here is you got tungsten inclusion, which is will cause porosity and all kinds of other stuff. Now this last bead, You can also see that the cleaning action is a little bit less. The bead's a lot cleaner. It's more consistent, and that's exactly what we're looking for. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take this tungsten and we're going to utilize the machine to help us ball this. But I got to grind it first because I got a little bit of aluminum on it, and then we'll ball it. Alright guys, so now we've got a nice little ball on the end of there. I don't know how well you'll be able to see that on the camera, but there is a nice little ball on the end of that tungsten. So we're going to grab another piece of filler rod and we're going to run another bead, and we'll see what it turns out like. Hopefully better, if not different. That I dipped it, and now we broke the ball off inside of it. That one actually wasn't going too bad, and in the beginning you notice it started better. I just rammed into the pedal and, you know, put a whole shit ton of amperage in it right off the rip. But so far, out of all of these beads, wow, that torch is hot. I don't advise that. Use a number 17 or a 26 if you're going to be doing that kind of craziness with it. But yeah, let me grab a pointer here. So as you guys can see, this was the very first bead of the day, and although it wasn't terrible, it wasn't consistent. We had a porosity pocket here, another pocket here. Then we had a very inconsistent dab there, more inconsistent dabs, and then once we got out here, the puddle widened out. I had too much heat in it here, not enough heat in it here. Then we move on to the second one. We were doing pretty consistent dab wise until we got to here. Let off the pedal a little bit, the puddle skinnied up, and then we had some issue. Put power back into it, you can see the puddle widen, took power back out, and you see we really had a bad time over here. This bead wasn't doing too bad. It was pretty consistent all the way up until the point where I dipped the tungsten in the puddle. So that's never good. And then this bead right here is actually the best one, I think, out of everything tonight so far. Is very consistent, except for that dab was a little big. And then we got down, and we probably could have used a little bit more heat right here, but overall looks-wise and penetration-wise, the fourth one we did is probably the best. This one is now covered by soot because I kept dabbing the tungsten. This was the first one with the bald electrode, and it was terrible. That was terrible. This one was not bad until here, and then I dipped the tungsten again. And that one got bad. This one was bad. That one, not enough power. This one, the power was good, but very inconsistent with the bald. Again, same thing here. We went up to 250 hertz. And although we were a little bit more consistent-wise, we're kind of all over the place. This one, terrible. And this one, not too bad. So, I think overall, the bald electrode, I don't like at all. So I'm going to stick with my pointed electrode on aluminum. Just gives me a better start. Like you can see all these starts are right on the edge and they're perfect. Once I hit the bald electrode, it blew the edges away in some spots. and then didn't get enough on the edges in other spots. Like here, I literally on the edge, on the edge, on the edge, on the edge. These are off the edge, on the edge, blew the edge away, blew the edge away, blew the edge away. So as far as an inverter machine with a bald electrode, I wouldn't recommend it because I don't like it. It made me even worse than I thought I was before. So we're going to stick to the pointed electrode. And what we're going to do is when we come back after everything's cooled off, we are literally going to run some more beads, and we're just going to keep padding them on the other side. We'll start in the middle, we'll work out, and we will pad beads until I get consistent with this. All right, guys. So while this is all cooling off, I wanted to take a second and just kind of, again, just reiterate to you that practicing doesn't mean that you suck. You know what? If you do suck, practicing is going to make you better. And there are some things that I still suck at, and aluminum happens to be one of them. Getting consistency on aluminum is very difficult for me. Other people have no problem with it, but it's very difficult for me because I do a ton of stainless and a ton of titanium. And with aluminum, you have to feed pretty much twice as much rod as you would be with titanium or stainless. So for me, getting my rod feeding down and getting to know the puddle and everything else, I mean, that fourth bead that we made, the more I look at it, the more I love it, is what we're going to be after. So I literally will sit here and just, you know, hold this piece of wire and feed it. And one of the things that you want to try to do with your wire feeding hand is give yourself a point in space and try to keep the tip of that in that space as you're feeding that wire. So what you don't want is you don't want to be doing this and then doing that and then doing this and then doing that while you're feeding it. You want it to be very consistent so that that wire stays in the same spot and literally just feeds straight across. So you don't want to have any kind of inconsistencies in how that wire is moving. So this is how I choose to do it. You may literally want to hold on to it like a pencil and just dab, 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 stop, let it extend, dab, 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 do it that way. But I found that once I get a rhythm going, I can literally do this all day and keep it right in the spot that I need to keep it in. So that's another thing, is a lot of times I'll just sit here and I'll do this while I'm talking to somebody. And I'll literally just keep feeding until I hit the target that I'm looking for, which is right there. So that's one practice method that I use a lot. Is a lot of people will yell at me because I'm sitting here playing with wire while they're trying to talk to me, but it helps. And then the other thing you can do too is use your other hand. Use your right hand, feed it with your right hand, because the more you can do with both hands, the better off you'll be. Because I know that I've ran into on several occasions where feeding wire like this and welding all of a sudden has to change because I can't move the part and I have to weld on this side, and welding like this isn't going to work. So you literally have to be able to switch hands, and then now you've got to figure out how you're going to weld with this, with your left hand on the torch and your right hand on the feeding. So you want to make sure that you're trying to be ambidextrous with this stuff. And I know for those of you that are just getting into this, you've not only got a torch in one hand that you're trying to manipulate, wire feed in the other hand that you're trying to manipulate, and a foot pedal that you're trying to manipulate. And if you're using a positioner, then you have another foot pedal too. So all four of your extremities are doing something. And practicing is the only way you're going to get that. Because for me, one of the biggest problems I had when I started is I lack hand-eye coordination. And I lack hand-eye coordination when it comes to involving my feet and legs along with my hands. Like with my hands, I'm fine. With my feet, I'm fine. When I put the two together, not so good anymore. So that was one of the big hurdles that I had to overcome. Was basically when I first started, I would smash the pedal to the floor and then I would adjust my heat input with travel speed, which is not necessarily the best thing to do, because then your dabs are different, you're inconsistent, and all kinds of stuff. So you want to be able to manipulate the pedal while moving the torch and feeding filler wire. So that's another thing you want to practice too, is, you know, like a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just bounce my leg up and down, and I will literally use one hand to do something else and then use this hand to feed wire, so that all of my extremities are doing something completely different. And it trains your brain into being able to manipulate things the way that you want to manipulate them so that you can get consistency. And I know you guys are probably looking at, you know, this gigantically hot piece of metal right now and saying, well, those beads all look better than what I can do, or those beads all look great, or you know what, some of you might be saying all those beads look like crap. But what it boils down to is I am trying to practice to get the consistency, and these are some of the practice techniques that you guys can use to get better. So like I said before, we're going to go ahead and we're going to resharpen that tungsten. We're going to come back on the other side, and I'm going to put you in time-lapse mode, and we are actually going to time-lapse me running a shit ton of beads, blowing through a bunch of wire, blowing through a bunch of argon, just so that I can try to get some consistency. And we'll see. Now that I've practiced a little bit, maybe my beads will be consistently good. So that's what we're going to do. And I might even switch to my 26 torch because, man, is that thing hot right now. But we shall see. So we'll be right back. Alright guys, so we went and switched to our number 26. And you can see the difference quite clearly. So the torch I normally use is a number 20 water cooled, which is identical to a number 9 air cooled. Now, number 9 air cooleds are good up to about 100 amps. They start to get really, really hot. We were running at 180. Not too good. Now, water cooled version of this is good to 250 amps. But if you want to get 250 amps air cooled, you need that guy. So you can see the actual size difference. Number 26 is massive compared to the number 9, and if you put them, you know, side by side or back to front, you'll see how much bigger the heads are, how much bigger the handle is, how much bigger the cable is. Everything's just bigger. So we're going to use the number 26 now to do all these next beads so that we don't cook the number 9, because currently my number 20 is dead. All the hoses blew apart and it leaked coolant all in my lap, which is not fun, by the way. So we are now going to set you guys up, and we're going to run bead after bead after bead. We'll grab some more filler wire, and we're just going to go to town on this plate and see kind of where we're at. You know, just some practice runs. So I'm going to throw you guys over here again. Hopefully you'll get a pretty decent view of it, a visual of it, or whatever I was trying to say there. And yeah, so enjoy some high-speed aluminum welding. right, guys, camera's almost dead. Everything is super hot. The table's even, like, almost can't touch it hot. But towards the end there, you saw me messing around with some settings on the welder. I was playing around with pulse settings, which, hit or miss. On some of the settings that I did, we were able to actually freeze the puddle in place, which kind of made for a really nice bead, but it took a whole lot longer waiting for the pulse. But there was one interesting thing that I wanted to show you guys about aluminum and why you have to kind of be careful with it when you're welding it. So I didn't let this plate cool at all in between any of these welds. You guys saw it was straight up welding. So you can see that these beginning beads look pretty decent. And then towards the end, you start to get this weird issue where you don't see ripples anymore. You start seeing them there, you see the dimes, and then all of a sudden they just disappear. Well, that happens a lot when you don't let aluminum cool in between weld sessions. So what you'll get is some real weirdness. But you can see like that middle bead right there is one that we did with pulse. And that came out pretty good. And that was at, I think, 5 pulses per second. So that one actually looks really nice. The rest of these came out really nice. And again, because I didn't let any of this stuff cool, the beads are a little funky. But yeah, you can see that, you know, as the plate got hotter, these beads look great. That beads start to spread out a little bit, and then they just, you know, as the plate heated up, it got nastier and nastier. So it's really important to weld what you need to weld, let it cool down, and then start over again. Otherwise, you're going to get some weird stuff. Plus all the warping. That plate was perfectly flat before we started. So you get a lot of warping out of it. But if you guys are just learning how to weld or learning how to set up your camera for the first time, like apparently I am, if you guys are just learning how to weld, a lot of those exercises that I explained to you before are going to come in super handy. You know, feeding wire, I hold it between my thumb and my index and middle finger and just use my fingers to kind of push it. Or if I get close into something, I'll usually just kind of work to get that wire fed. But it's easiest to just do it like this and use your fingers to pull it. And that's why you kind of need TIG gloves or some sort of rubber glove so that this doesn't just slip. But these exercises really, really help. I can't tell you how much exercises like this done regularly will improve not only your quality of welding, but your speed as well. You know, when I first started welding aluminum, running a bead like that would take me 5 minutes because I had the heat settings wrong. You know, it was taking too much time for the metal to heat up. I was putting too much heat in the metal. So there's a lot of things that exercises like this can teach you. And it's not just about your technique. It's also about the welder settings and your torch selection and everything else. Now, I noticed on this one that number 26 torch gets heavy, like super heavy. I don't like it at all. I like my number 9. I like my number 20 water cooled. So much easier for me to handle. That 26 was just a beast and a nightmare. And I'd only ever use it if, you know, I had to weld 300 amps or something. But again, if you're just starting out in welding, exercises like this are super important. Go get some scrap metal, scrap aluminum, steel, stainless, whatever you know, whatever you get. And if you're local to here, I get all of my metal. All right, guys. So I filled up a 32 gig memory card, which means I talked entirely too much. But I'm just going to leave you with this. If you're starting out welding, practice as much as you can. There is nothing better than just grabbing metal and practice, practice, practice. So, with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm trying to get more videos out, but I can't promise you anything because it is our busy season. So we'll see you on the next one, whenever that might be. Have a good night, everybody.